Thank you for joining this webinar. It's on industrial bearing remanufacture. The author, Hannes, he heads up a team at Steyr in Austria, who are responsible for the majority of the SKF bearing remanufacturing requirements in Europe. SKF Stronger is hashtag SKF Stronger is a link to a series of webinars presented by us at SKF to highlight our platforms globally. The practicalities of the webinar, everybody will be muted, and if you would like to share any questions, there is a facility in the chat box for you to do that. The session will be recorded, and I estimate the presentation will last about 30 minutes. SKF's business and strategy is based on a deep understanding of the trends and drivers that impact or have the potential to impact all markets, regions and industries in which the group operates. For more information on SKF's regions and industries, you can see our annual report. If we look at where our environmental challenges are, SKF are based at the forefront of trying to meet these challenges. SKF's strategy is the foundation from which the group works towards its vision of a world of reliable rotation, and its mission of becoming the undisputed leader in the bearing business. Sustainably is embedded in SKF's business. Clean technology, in short, clean tech, is any process, product or service that reduces negative environmental impacts through significant energy efficiency improvements for the sustainable use of resources or environmental protection activities. So we look at remanufacturing as being part of our strategic focus areas. In 2019, we would have used 1.7 times more resources from the planet than nature could renew in the whole year. And the development goals are looking for us to change our methods of manufacturing. In this slide, we look at the linear and the circular economy. So we take resources from the ground to make products which we use, when we no longer want them, throw them away. Make waste. This is called a linear economy and is not sustainable for business, people or the planet. For the circular economy, in nature nothing goes to waste. Everything is food for something else. It is called the ecological cycle of life. A technical cycle can be the same. This is called the circular economy. The core idea is to keep the same materials in the loop and avoid the use of virgin natural resources. There are three principles of the circular economy. These are: reduce. Around 80% of the environmental impacts are determined at the design stage. By viewing waste as a design flaw, selecting materials wisely, and through the use of new technologies, we can avoid waste and pollution in the first place. Reuse. By making the life of a product or component longer by maintenance and reuse, the need for resources is reduced. This also goes for resources needed to make the product work, like lubricants. An example of this is SKF Remanufacturing. Recycle. Material from scrap parts can be turned into new products. With the right design and the end-of-use management, it can be made sure that the materials and the products are possible to be separated and sorted for treatment. So in reality, we'd like to recycle bearing metal back into bearings, and scrap cars and such like that into the waste products they use. One essential benefit of remanufacturing is that already processed material is used for a longer time. For example, a bearing that is normally replaced after 3 years could be remanufactured twice and last up to 9 years, providing the function of the 3 new bearings. The remanufactured bearings and units from SKF function as new and are delivered to customers with the same warranty as the bearings, as new bearings. For the customer, this brings benefits such as reduced lead times, lean operations, and often lower costs. The remanufactured bearings cut emissions in the production phase up to 90% compared with the new bearing. Remanufacturing means rebuilding a product to the specifications of the original product using a combination of reused, repaired, and new parts. Remanufacturing is found in many SKF business models using a combination with condition monitoring and predictive maintenance, but increasingly also as a standalone product. As an example, flying Frankfurt to Madrid and back 3.5 times is the same as manufacturing a spherical roll bearing from new, as is eating 33 kilos of beef or driving a new car 8,400 kilometers. As I've said, this is remanufacturing, rebuilding a product to specifications of original manufactured product using a combination of reused and repaired and new parts, the important point of remanufacturing. Hopefully you'll be able to see this video. I think it speaks for itself, the benefits of remanufacturing. But to be able to remanufacture, you need to do it the right way. So there is a big impact on service life and the environmental conditions, contamination, poor installation, poor lubrication, all offer abnormal fatigue. If we look at here as a typical bearing life graph, we can, given the right capture points, increase a bearing's life 3 times. So if you capture the bearing at the right point, it is enabled to be remanufactured. If you let it carry on to its life, it won't be able to be remanufactured. Capture at the proper point, and you can remanufacture again. And this can be done 2 times, so increasing the bearing life by 3. But this is all important about where you capture these points of fatigue in the bearing. So for instance, if you look at this graph, early detection is crucial. A customer in Sweden had over 700 connected lubricant points and condition monitoring points. And they were linked to our SKF cloud through a remote connection to monitoring center in Gothenburg. The reduction of unplanned stops improved sustainability performance. So as they were caught at this point using SKF condition monitoring, we were more able to remanufacture at a lower cost. If you capture bearing at the listen and feel point, it's less likely to be remanufacturable, and it's going to be more expensive if it can be remanufactured. An example, digital transformation affects all parts of the value chain, from digital twins in design and manufacturing to integrated planning, purchasing and customer use, to maintenance and condition monitoring. It also changes the way companies go to market. Further, the cost to improve performance is drastically reduced by digitalization. we can detect defects before they cause damage and take preventative action. By installing sensors, SKF's condition monitoring and automated lubricating system. At the same time, we learn more about why assets fail, and we use that knowledge when we develop the next generation of products and services. Today, we monitor millions of customers' bearings, a number that will grow exponentially over the years to come. This is another good point about remanufacturing. We can understand what's going wrong with the machine. We can understand how we can improve that by aligning properly, by using more lubrication, by using better lubrication, by using different clearances. If you have a look at this digitalization at a mining customer, we had 8,000 sensors installed, and this was done on a service agreement with SKF, so making it much more affordable. This is an example of a large-sized bearing which had been received in Steyr for remanufacturing. You'll notice on the rolling element that there was a crack. The outer edge of the outer face, there was fretting, and there were screw marks inside the inner face. We remanufactured this bearing by using oversized rolling elements which were manufactured from new, manufactured at Steyr, grinding and polishing of the inner race, and introducing new load points. This was remanufactured and was able to go into use with a year's warranty. This is a large size bearing after remanufacturing, and on this bearing we've introduced a new coating, black oxidization, which helps the bearing strength and the bearing last longer in service. We can also remanufacture slewing bearings. These can be done up to a size of 4 meters at Steyr, and for bigger sizes they can be done in other factories. With the slewing ring, we look at the bearing faces and we don't go much into the gear end of the slewing rings. Caster bearings is a big part of our business with steelworks. With a caster bearing, it's a smaller diameter than is usually a remanufactured bearing, but we do these in larger quantities, and there are various business models that we can use to make it more beneficial to the customer. We also remanufacture housings. This is a housing before remanufacture, and then a housing after remanufacture. Again, these are all supplied with a warranty and traceability. The process of remanufacturing is quite typical, and it's a tried and tested method. We look at the bearing at the customer and we agree that there could be a remanufacturing capability. This is then sent to Steyr, where the bearing is analysed, there's cleaning and inspection, and there's documentation at that point. There's a quotation then issued to the customer where the customer makes a decision if they want to proceed with the remanufacturing of the bearing. And then the remanufacturing takes place with the remanufacture of the components, high quality checks, assembly, preservation, packaging, shipping. We also supply the documentation that we found from the bearing report. We will send that off with the remanufacturing report. There are 3 service levels of remanufacturing that we work to in remanufacturing process. The simplest and cheapest method would be service level 2, and this is where a bearing has been on a shelf for a long period of time, where it's over this use by date, and we would then check this out, clean it, re-lubricate it, pack it, mark it that it's been remanufactured, and give it a new warranty and send it back to the customer. Service level 3, where the bearing has been in use but it's been caught at probably the optimum point, where we just need to do some polishing, re-lubrication, repack it. Service level 4 is the high end of the remanufacturing process, where we would need to do some grinding and polishing and some new components like oversized rolling elements. This would be then relubricated, marked that it's been remanufactured and packed off. We do also have the facility of emergency repair. So this will bridge the time until a new bearing is available. If a bearing that is required is on a long warranty, on a long delivery, then we can remanufacture a bearing. This would have no warranty, but we would also be able to supply an analyst report. And as we've discussed, we can customize the remanufactured bearing with coatings, sensor mounts, and clearance change. We could go from C3 to C4, for instance. SKF's business strategy is based on a deep understanding of the trends and drives that impact or have the potential to impact all markets, regions and industries in which the group operates. So remanufacturing will increase profitability because you're using the one bearing a number of times if you catch it at the right point. This will give you more machine uptime, will lower operation expenditure by improving bearing life, and will reduce emissions by not supplying a new bearing all the time. And then this will result in reduced maintenance because we, using all the facilities that we have, can give an indication of what needs to be improved on the machine and the fitting of the bearing.
Hi, my name is Pekka Virsihemo, Central Workshop Manager here at SSAB Raahe in Finland. SSAB aims to be safest steel company in the world. Our vision is to contribute a stronger, lighter and more sustainability world. Remanufacture bearing is one good example to support our vision and principles. SSAB uses remanufacture bearing in our steel machinery, reducing maintenance, energy, waste and cost. With this example, we take responsibility to improve and contribute to a better world. Thank you.
That video was important because of the work we carry out in steelworks with caster bearings. Now, with the caster bearing, they are used on an hourly rate, so you could have a bearing in for 1,000 hours where it could be rechanged. These bearings are then generally scrapped. So what we do with a caster bearing is take a quantity of bearings and have a service ratio where we look at taking 100 bearings, for example, and saying that 80% of those bearings will be remanufacturable style. We can then give you a business model where we can have a unit price for a remanufactured bearing and a brand new bearing. So giving back 100% of the bearings, and maybe only 80% of them have been remanufactured. This enables us to keep the benefits of being able to monitor caster machines and be able to improve the way that the caster machines operate during their service. So we can, for instance, introduce new lubrication systems. We can introduce better lubrication. We can also look at sealing bearings, and we can look at the impact of alignment of operations. We have many engineers and training facilities where we can teach the customer how to fit the bearings in a better manner so they'll last longer, and how to take the bearings off or dismount the bearings in a fashion that they will be able to be remanufactured. So remanufacturing, the possibility of remanufacturing is everywhere. If you look at all the industries that we work in, yes, bigger the bearing, the more beneficial it'll be financially. But if you go work into a program like a caster bearing, you could remanufacture in most of the industries that you come across today. And SKF supplies more than 40 industries globally with products and services, both directly and indirectly through a network of over 7,000 distributors. The offering includes developing and manufacturing a broad product range of bearings, seals and lubrication systems. as well as rotating shaft services and solutions for machine health, assessment, reliability engineering and remanufacturing. One of our strengths is the ability to keep developing new technologies that are used to create value-adding solutions. This gives us competitive advantages to customers and contributes at the same time to a sustainable global society. So we have more than 20 years experience in remanufacturing. We have quite a lean team of engineers and technicians remanufacturing bearings globally. And these are all done with state-of-the-art machinery, and we've invested quite sums of money into our factories. So we have 13 industrial bearing remanufacturing centres globally, and the one we've been talking about today is Steyr in Austria. So, to join the circular movement, we're looking at remanufacturing industrial bearings, reconditioned oiling, introducing better lubrication systems. We have a massive program of railway bearings currently running in many parts of Europe, and these have been tried and tested over the years. SKF combines hands-on experience in over 40 industries with a vast product portfolio and knowledge across the SKF technology platforms. Bearings in units, seals, lubrication systems, condition monitoring equipment and services. So we have the potential of really getting on board remanufacturing. At the moment we're quite low on this potential. If everyone works together, we can look at remanufacturing on a much higher level with everybody's help. We've only really touched on the subject of remanufacturing today, but hopefully it will lead to a further discussion. There are many assets and things we could go into, but the presentation would take a long time. But we've hopefully give you an insight and a taste as to what remanufacturing can do for us all globally. I'll take any questions if there are any, Ringo.
Yes, hi John. Thank you so far. Yes, we have some quite interesting questions in the chat box, and the first one is already answered, I think. Is there any remanufacturing center in the Middle East? I think the answer is no.
No, you're right. There's.
Do you know if there are any plans to develop one? And
Well, given SKF's always looking for innovation, then I think, yeah, I think it would be something which is being considered, but I don't know if there are any plans at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. I hope this question is answered as good as possible for the moment. Then we have another question. Has SKF implemented any remanufacturing facility at the customer site, like inside a roll shop or a steel mill?
Yeah, we do work with some of our key accounts where they are remanufacturing. One that comes to mind would be Caterpillar. They have a remanufacturing facility where they remanufacture SKF bearings back into their process. And I think there are about 5 or 6 other large manufacturing companies that do this.
Okay, but is that something that has to be discussed with the customer, if that's possible?
Oh, of course, yeah. It could make it part of a conversation and part of a remanufacturing program. Yeah, well worth discussing if the quantity's there, if the right bearings are there.
Okay. Another question. Do you teach the customer to be able to decide which bearing is suitable for refurbishment, or can only SKF do that or make this decision?
No, we do prefer to teach the customer. So we have, like I said, engineers and courses which can be put together with the customer to make it suitable for their bearing. So, for instance, we've done this at a steel mill where we were taking bearings off, following the customer's procedure, and then advising the customer what he needed to do differently to make sure the bearings were, first of all, dismounted properly. And then we discussed how to look at the different areas of the bearing which may give an indication that it won't be remanufacturable, and to give an indication of it definitely will be remanufacturable. So yeah, there's loads of help we can give the customers for that.
Okay, sounds like a good answer to this good question. Another question is how refurbishing bearings can help customers to increase their uptime. Can you tell something about that?
Sure. So what we're looking at when we're remanufacturing a bearing, we're not just looking about what we need to do to remanufacture it. We're looking about what's caused the problems in the bearing. So by looking at fretting marks or scoring on the faces, we can advise the customer that the bearing has not been mounted properly, or there's a shaft problem or a clearance problem, and then we can advise how to fix that problem so to increase their uptime. And we can also increase the uptime by introducing condition monitoring points on the bearing so they can be condition monitored as well, and that will increase machine uptime. Hope that helps.
Yes, I think so. I think so. Is this refurbishment of bearings? How is that compared to a new bearing when you look at uptime?
How do you mean? Sorry.
If there's if you buy a new bearing, and
okay, no, we're looking at the process rather than the bearing. So the bearing that comes off tells us a lot about what the machine is doing correctly and incorrectly. So we can then advise the customer what they need to change on that bearing to make it more efficient. So it could be a clearance, it could be different lubrication, or it could be the installation process.
Okay, thank you. And the last question for this moment is remanufacturing available for all countries? And if yes, is it also suitable for all types of bearings?
Okay, it's available to all types of bearings, and it's also available to our competitors' bearings. So we could remanufacture an NSK bearing or a Timken bearing, but you need to decide if it's feasible financially. So as a rule of thumb, we would say bearings with an OD of 150 millimeters or over are good for remanufacturing, but they also need to be of value to the customer. So if you were sending a bearing to Steyr, which would cost logistically an amount, you then have the remanufacturing costs. Steyr would send that bearing back to you on their costs, but would that bearing then be financially viable for it to be worth remanufacturing? So it's all about the value of the bearing and the value of the requirement. Sometimes there's a requirement regardless of value because you need the bearing back as soon as possible so you can get your production running. But it's mainly based on common sense of whether that bearing would be remanufacturable financially.
Okay. Are there any specific types of bearings that are more suitable than others?
No, I think that the large size bearings are more suitable. Where you've got a spherical roller bearing, they are probably the most common ones of big diameters, 600 millimeters, 550, in that sort of area. Then they're the most common sizes. Slewing rings as well, they're quite common in the big diameters. But I would say, like my last answer, if it's financially viable, then anything can be remanufactured.
Okay, clear. Okay, John, there are no questions left at the moment in the chat box. maybe there is someone who would like to know before we stop. Yes, there is another question. Do you remanufacture other brands' bearings? And if they need component replacement, what do you do?
Yeah, well, we will remanufacture other bearings, and if it's a component, it'll be done to the ISO standard or the standard to which the bearing was manufactured in the first place. So it would be remanufactured to a standard, i.e., if you had a rolling element to be remanufactured, it would be remanufactured to the right size. If you would grind in and introduce in clearances, it would be done to the international standard that bearing had to be produced to.
Okay. I hope this answer is what you expected. Okay. So for the moment, there are no more questions left in the chat box. This session has been recorded, so we will send this recording automatically to you later today or latest tomorrow morning, including the slide deck. So you will have everything available to share with your colleagues or to look through it again. If there are any questions, I will also add the information, contact persons at the end of the slide deck. So you will receive that also tomorrow with the recordings. So if there are no more questions at the moment, we thank you very much for your attention. We thank you very much for being with us. Hopefully we will see you again soon in another webinar. And otherwise, have a nice day, stay safe, and hopefully we'll meet you next time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.